Did Hourglass deliver us from ashy? Today's video is going to compare the new Hourglass Tiger and Elephant palettes with older Hourglass palettes to see if these palettes hold up. Is it still going to be ashy? We're going to compare it with swatches and side-by-side comparisons to help you decide if Hourglass is still ashy. This video is going to be just swatches on my arm. To note, I am African American and I have brown skin. I have a deep tan complexion with neutral undertones. My shade ranges from in the medium deep category. So that is where I can offer my opinion and swatches. I will have my foundation shade references in the description box so you can figure out if my shade is close to yours and you can kind of gauge what the products will look like on your skin. There were 3 palettes on the website. I did not pick up the butterfly palette because I did not feel like it would do anything for me. There were 2 deeper blush shades, but the other shades were shades I already had, so I decided not to pick it up. Now we're going to start with the beloved Tiger palette. I know everyone has been really curious about that one. I want to note that there is an option to customize your cover for the palettes. So my Tiger palette actually is an elephant cover, and I chose this because I thought the elephant art was the most beautiful, and I knew that the Tiger palette would be the deepest one. So just in case I decide to give the other palette away, at least I'll have the cover that I wanted. So this is actually the Tiger palette. Think of this as a Tiger palette. This is the deepest one out of all 3. And this is the one that we're kind of hoping is going to be the deep palette for deeper complexions. As you can see, now I'm switching over to the elephant palette. Again, I customized the covers on hourglass.com, so the palettes are not, they're going to have different covers, but this, think of this as the elephant palette. As you can see, these are the shades. Now we're going to look at them side by side, just so you have just an idea of how they compare to each other. Just give me a moment here. I'm just going to switch them over. So here they are. On the left we have the elephant, and then on the right we have the tiger. And I'm going to start I'm going to start my comparisons on a product first I'm going to start doing side by side, comparing them with the other older palettes, just so you have an idea. And I'm going to start by comparing these 2 palettes to each other, since these are the new releases. So going off the swatches, I think that the elephant palette would be best for medium skin tones. Here are my swatches. And this is natural lighting. And I'm going to go over each of the items one by one. So going from left to right, it starts with the finishing powder dim light. The finishing number 2 is the finishing powder soft light. Number 3 is the metallic strobe powder beaming strobe light. Number 4 is the bronzer, the lustrous bronze light. Number 5 is the blush iridescent coral, and number 6 is a blush radiant rose. So the bronzer is the product that I'm most curious about, and on my skin tone, which is tan medium deep, it's very, very slight. So I would say this is not a bronzer I could use as a bronzer. Perhaps I would use it on top of bronzers, of other bronzers, of matte bronzers, to give it more luminosity. But no, this is not the bronzer that would be for me. This finishing powders, I have no issue with them. I mean, they look a little bit ashy here, but that's because I kept building it up because I wanted you to see the comparisons. The first finishing powder is a little bit more it's a little bit more cool than the second one. The highlighter on this palette would be nice on my skin tone. There's no direct sunlight today, so you can't see like how shimmering it is, but it is a really nice highlighter on my skin tone. The two blushes, they took some building up, but I do think these will be great on my skin tone. They're kind of similar in the same color family, but as you can see, the one on the right is more it's deeper. But I do think that these are not going to be super pigmented blushes. But I think that's okay, because I think for me, if I want to go to work, I don't want something that's too stark or too crazy or too bright. So yeah, here we go. These are swatches of the Elephant Lustrous palette. The second product, which I think is getting the most interest, is the Tiger palette. Here is another close-up view of this palette. And so here are my swatches. And this is of the Transcendent palette, which is the Tiger palette. Swatches on another angle. So for the Tiger Transcendent palette, starting from the left to the right, we have the finishing powder Transcendent Light. That is going to be a bronzer on my complexion, but it is meant for a finishing powder. Second is the metallic strobe powder, Brilliant Glow Strobe Light. The third is a blush called Burnished Glow. The fourth is a metallic strobe powder, Divine Strobe Light. The fifth is metallic strobe powder, Coffee Flash Strobe Light. And number 6 and last is the Iridescent Rose Blush. Tiger palette swatches on the left and Elephant swatches on the right. As you can see, Tiger is clearly going to be the deeper one. So now that we've done side-by-side comparisons of the Lustrous Elephant palette and the Transcendent Tiger palette, we're going to compare these palettes with previous Hourglass releases. One thing I want to keep in mind is that I'm doing this from a swatch perspective, and I'm doing this from just a side-by-side view perspective. So I will do select swatches of select products on each of the Hourglass palettes, starting with the Lustrous Elephant palette. When looking at this year's Lustrous Elephant palette, the first comparison that came into my mind was last year's Hourglass Ambient Lighting Edit Universe Unlocked palette. These two shades, these two blush shades in particular, they look very similar to last year's. So I'm going to pull out last year's and compare it. So here is last year's palette, and I'm gonna just put this on top to avoid any reflection, but here is last year's palette. This is the Ambient Lighting Edit Universe Unlocked. You can see. So as you can see, these blush shades are pretty similar. I'm gonna hold them side by side so you can have a better idea. So on the right here, we have the 2022 Lighting Edit Unlocked Elephant Luscious palette. This is the new one. This is the Elephant palette. On the left, we have 2021's Ambient Lighting Edit Universe Unlocked. So as you can see, these blush shades, they're kind of sort of similar. They have that same pink vibe. Surprisingly, last year's palette for these blushes is actually deeper than this year's. And here are my swatches comparing the blushes. The Hourglass palette from last year is on the left, and the Hourglass Elephant palette is on the right. So as you can see, these blushes are a very similar vibe. I would say that if you are of a deeper complexion, so medium, deep, and deeper, I would say if you're interested in these blushes, you're actually better off getting last year's face palettes, because those blushes are deeper. And I looked on the website, and these 2021's palette is actually still available. So definitely go for that one instead of this year's Elephant palette, because this year's Elephant palette has, the shades are kind of similar, but they're lighter, as you can see. And again, another look at these palettes. So absolutely, if you can go for this one. If you have a deeper shade and you're interested in those pink tones. This one is still pretty, but I think if you want these types of tones, they're better for lighter skin tones. I think regarding the finishing powders, you can go either or. As you can see, last year's palette has a bigger pan of finishing powder, but this year has 2 finishing powders. So either or. Again, I think if you're a deeper skin tone, definitely grab last year's, which is still available online. Another thing that I'm very interested in is these highlighters. So I'm going to quickly just compare swatches for those. Let's start in 2021's palette. And 2022's. $2021 highlighter on top, 2022 on the bottom. If I would say, they're very, very similar. I would say that 2022 is a little bit deeper and more neutral, whereas 2021 Universe Unlocked is more yellow, has more yellow undertones. But either way, you can go either way. If you're of a deeper skin tone and you want those pinky blushes, I would say go for 2021's palette still, because there's no big difference. And lastly, we have the bronzer comparisons, because there is a bronzer on both the 2021 palette and the 2022. But these are not gonna bronze. If you're over a MAC NC 40, 42-ish, these are not the best bronzers for you. I'm about a MAC NC 45, and like these, they kind of sort of show up, but they don't really. So I wouldn't even bother with this bronzer. Last year's is more, if I had to compare though, last year's is definitely more yellow. This year's is more red. Let me compare it on my actual palm, just for those of you with lighter skin tones, because that's going to be more of an appropriate comparison. So right here I'm doing last year's bronzer, swatching it on my palm. You can see this is last year's, and then this year's last year's. So as you can see, last year's definitely is more yellow toned. This year's has some more red, but they're still pretty neutral bronzer shades, I would say. And they also both have that luminosity, which doesn't necessarily translate to Mr. Tin Man, but it does have a luminosity that really will blend in and look natural on the skin. So yeah, these are the bronzer comparisons on, I guess, lighter skin tones. Sorry, my camera's trying to focus. Here we go. Side note, I want to compare that my hands are actually not ashy. It's just, and I've been lotioning. So yeah, it's just that unfortunately the light, natural light, is something you can't really control, and the way it's bouncing off is reflecting a lot of white. But I am not ashy. It's the light. Okay, so we've compared the ambient lighting from last year to this new Luscious Elephant palette. Now let's compare some more with 2020's Hourglass palette. So this is 2020's Hourglass Lighting Edit Sculpture palette. And now we're comparing it to the 2022 Luscious Elephant. Not much to compare here. Different vibes. We have those finishing powders. We have a strobe powder. But here we go. I'm going to swatch the bronzers. So starting with this bronzer, which is called the Bronzer Natural Bronze Light bronzer, which actually did work on my skin tone, like as an actual bronzer. It was definitely a light bronzer, but it definitely bronzed me. It's hard to see with this lighting. I'm actually gonna switch over to my well, maybe not. Yeah, I'm gonna switch over to my palm because my palm is a representation of lighter skin tones, and these bronzers are going to be better for lighter skin tones anyway. So I'm actually going to switch over to my palm for these bronzer swatches. It just makes the most sense. So starting with 2020 Sculpture palette, swatching this on my palm again. So you can see it's more red. It's definitely deeper. Has that rosiness to it, which actually looks really nice on my face. And here is 2022's Hourglass Elephant Luscious palette. Definitely a big difference here. As you can see, the Hourglass as you can see, the bottom one, which is the 2022, has more, it's more yellow, it's more neutral. The top is more rosy. If I'm being honest, I definitely like, even with the skin tone, with the depth, even not considering the depth of these shades, I think I personally prefer the top shade from 2020. It just has that nice rosiness. The second one is more neutral, but yep, here we go. Here is a final comparison, starting with the 2020 Sculpture, the 2021 Universe Unlocked, and the 2022 Elephant Luscious. Now moving on to the Hourglass Lighting Edit Unlocked Transcendent Tiger palette. We're going to compare it with the previous releases to see like how it stacks up. I mean, obviously this one's going to be deeper, but we just want to compare to see how it's progressed. I'm going to compare it with the Hourglass Lighting Edit Palette Volume 3. This is a face trio that was released for deeper skin tones. On my complexion, it's more of a bronzer palette than a kind of face like finishing powder palette. But I'm going to just hold them side by side so we can kind of compare. 1 second here. Let's refocus. As you can see, All right, so let's start with some swatches. So here are my swatches. The top 3 shades are going to be from the Ambient Lighting Edit 3 palette, which came out last year and was for deeper skin tones. The bottom 2 are from this year's Hourglass Lighting Edit Tiger Transcendent palette. I want to note that these darker shades on my skin tone are meant to be finishing powders, but on my complexion, they translate as bronzers. So keep that in mind. I would say both of these palettes are ideal for medium deep complexions. It's just that with the Hourglass palettes, you sometimes have to be more creative and use the shades not as intended. So luckily for me, I'm able to have a bronzer in my Tiger palette. But that bronzer is supposedly a finishing powder for the deeper skin tones. Oh, here we go. So as you can see, the bronzer shades, and so this is a finishing powder shade from the Ambient Lighting 3. We're gonna move down to bronzers. So bronzer for me, the first shade, the middle shade on the Unlock palette is over here. And then we have the highlighters. The Edit Palette 3 had a highlighter which was definitely too deep for my skin tone. But well, I didn't use it this summer. I forgot to use it this summer. I meant to use it to see how it would perform, but I never got a chance to. So as you can see, it's more peachy. This year's Tiger palette is more yellow. So this video will serve as an overview. So no need to screenshot because I will be posting photos and swatches with the names on it in my social media. So please follow Beauty Body Pearl on all social platforms and you'll see the photos of these comparisons, so you're not having to screenshot. You'll see actual photos and made for you to just save. So you won't need to screenshot this video. So this is the comparison. If I could only purchase one, I would absolutely go for the Tiger Transcendent palette from this year. Absolutely 100%. This palette as well is nice. It's a nice companion palette. If you're able to, I would get both because I think they complement each other well if you have a deeper skin tone. If you have a deeper skin tone than me, starting with maybe a MAC NW45-ish area, which is around Jackie Aina's skin tone. These will give you more, having the extra Ambient Lighting Volume 3 will give you more variety. It would give you a more peachy highlighter, as you can see. It would give you a lighter finishing powder if you need it. And this shade could even potentially serve as a bronzer for you if you have a lighter skin tone the way I do, or a lighter brown skin tone per se. So here's the comparison. Okay, so we're gonna quickly compare the last palettes with this Tiger palette. A swatch comparison I think would be a little bit ridiculous to do, but I just wanted to quickly show just the progression. This is 2020 Sculpture. This is 2021 Universe Unlocked, and this is 2022 Hourglass Tiger Transcendence. Here's some more comparisons. I think that if you want multiple palettes and your skin tone is MAC NC42 or deeper, I would not get the Elephant Luscious palette. Instead, I would go for 2021's Universe Unlocked for those deeper blushes, and absolutely the 2022 Lighting Edit Tiger Transcendence. If you want to, you can also you can also go for the Ambient Lighting Edit Volume 3. But personally, if I were buying this, if I were a caramel tan medium deep skin tone, around my range, if I wanted to buy 2 palettes, I would go for 2021's Lighting Universe Unlocked, which is still available online, and 2022 Lighting Edit Tiger. If I had a deeper skin tone, if I had more of an NW45, if I had more of a dark skin tone, I would go for the Tiger palette for sure. This is going to be a nice all over face palette. You'll be able to use all the pans, which is very important. Well, actually, this girl powder over here might be a little bit questionable for really deep skin tones, but I'm going to just assume if you're around Jackie Aina's skin tone, NW45 area, you should be able to use all of the pans. Definitely check creators with deeper skin tones. I will have some videos of creators with deeper skin tones who are demoing these palettes in my description box, so definitely check that. But if you're a deeper skin tone than me, around MAC NW45, Tiger palette for sure, to complement it or to supplement it if you want the Lighting Edit Volume 3, but I don't think you need to have that. It's nice to have, but not everyone's like a beauty brand or makeup collector the way I am, so you don't need to buy everything, you know. Final thoughts. If I had to grade Hourglass on this release, I would give them a B-. I think they did a great job of making a all-over face palette for dark and deep tan skin tones. However, I still think this could have been deeper for deep skin tones. This face palette has kind of had me in a little bit of a weird place because I think that this is a nice face palette for medium skin tones, but this really should have been a face palette for medium to deep tan skin tones. If they could only do 3 face palettes per year, having this have a darker, deeper bronzer shade and having the blushes have more variety would have made, and have the blushes be deeper, would have allowed this face palette to reach more people. Because right now it's better for a medium skin tone. I can still use it as a deep tan, medium deep, but it's really made for medium skin tones. And I think that they really should have varied the colors, made these colors different. Maybe take out this one and make it more, have more of a red blush. Had this bronzer go deep to around up to an NC46, NC47. It would have been great for medium to deep tan skin tones. Then I would have made this palette deeper. I would have made this palette, this pan here, I would have turned that into a really deep bronzer that would work on, at the very minimum, an NW45 Jackie Aina skin tone. And I would have probably left the rest of the shades alone, so that way it could be a perfect face palette for dark to deep skin tones. If you could only do 3. What would have been better would have been to have 4. Lightest one for fair to light, second one for light to medium, third one for tan to dark, and the fourth one for dark to deep. But this is progress. I can't say that I'm going to fail them for this progress. I think that this is a beautiful face palette, but I think more importantly, you should watch creators with deeper skin tones demo this product to really determine if it's going to be what you need. I will link a list of Hourglass reviews for people with deeper skin tones in my description box. Please check it out. Also, please check out my description box because I will be posting photos and swatches of these on social media. It's going to be better for you to see them on social media as opposed to trying to screenshot this video, because this is a video, so it's not really meant for people to just read and compare. It's going to be much easier to just go on my social media where I will have the better pictures and swatches and swatch comparisons. On my social media description box, you will see affiliate links, which means that that if you use these links to buy your palettes, I'm going to get a cut. Doesn't change the price of the palettes, but it's just an affiliate link, so of course I'm going to just be honest about that. Check out my description box, and for any other questions you might have, definitely comment the question. I will be sure to. And that's it. So for next time, I am Pearl Denise, and this is Beauty Body Pearl. Thanks.